World of Darkness is the name given to three related but distinct fictional universes created as settings for supernatural horror-themed, role-playing games. It is also the name of role-playing games in the second and third settings. The first was conceived by Mark Rein-Hagen, while the second was designed by several people at White Wolf Gaming Studio, which Rein-Hagen helped to found. The first two World of Darkness settings have been used for several horror-themed role-playing games that make use of White Wolf's storyteller storytelling system, as well as Mind's Eye Theater, a live-action role-playing game based on the core games. The third, Monty Cook's World of Darkness, created by Monty Cook based on the first two World of Darkness settings, includes only a single product, terminology and themes. In order to avoid confusing the two product lines, players refer to the most recent version of the World of Darkness line, released on August 21, 2004, as New World of Darkness, and a previous version as Classic World of Darkness. Prior to the re-release of CWOD, it was often referred to as OD4 Original or Old World of Darkness, while the newer setting is superficially very similar. The overall theme is one of dark mystery, with an emphasis on the unknown and personal horror. The apocalyptic theme present in CWOD has been removed from NWOD, as have the gothic punk aspects of the world setting. After White Wolf was purchased by Paradox Interactive in October 2015, the franchise was rebranded in December 2015. The New World of Darkness was renamed Chronicles of Darkness, while the Classic World of Darkness was renamed One World of Darkness. Chronicles of Darkness. Many details of the setting, especially in regards to its history, are left vague or otherwise have multiple explanations. Instead of reprinting a full rule set with each major title tweaked and modified for each game, the new setting uses one core system for all games, a streamlined and redesigned version of the old rules system renamed the storytelling system. A core rule book, simply titled The World of Darkness, has full rules for human characters and ghosts, though it has no specific setting material. It establishes a tone and mood for games featuring human protagonists. This is another contrast to the old games, where so many different types of supernatural creature had been defined that normal humans often seemed unimportant. The old setting also made humans a minor threat to the supernatural races, but the new rules make it possible for humans to be powerful opponents to the things in the night. The World of Darkness core book was well received and won the Origins Gamers' Choice Award for 2004. New rules system. The new World of Darkness rules are much more streamlined than the previous system. One 10-sided die is rolled for any dot possessed in attributes and skills, and one success is achieved for every die showing a result of 8 or higher. The 10 again rule has been added, in that a 10 indicates a re-roll, and the 10 still counts as a success. If another 10 is rolled, this step is repeated until anything but a 10 is rolled. Exceptional successes are indicated by having 5 or more successes on the action and can be regulated by the storyteller. Dramatic failures are now only possible on chance die rolls. When a dice pool is reduced by penalties to 0 or less, a single chance die is rolled. If a 10 is rolled, it is a success. If the result is less than 10 but not 1, then it is a simple failure. On a chance die, if the roll is a 1, then it is a dramatic failure, which is usually worse than a simple failure of the action and is regulated by the storyteller. The game also features a much more simplified combat system. In the old system, each attack made during a combat scene could easily involve 4 separate roles and, in many cases, required more due to supernatural abilities possessed by the characters. Combat scenes involving large numbers of combatants could take a very long time to resolve. The new system requires only one role, which is adjusted by the defensive abilities of the character being attacked and represents both the success and failure of the attack, as well as the damage inflicted. The nature and demeanor rules, which represented the personality of the characters that were common in the old games, have also been removed. In the new system, characters have a virtue and a vice trait that not only represents the personality of the characters, depending on how well the player role-played the trait, but also represents actions that the character can take in order to regain willpower points that have been spent during the course of play. The vices are the same as the deadly sins, while the virtues correspond to the 4 cardinal virtues and 3 theological virtues. In the game's second edition, players do not select virtues or vices from a list. Instead, they may select any lofty ideal to be the virtue, and any guilty pleasure to be the vice. The morality stat represents the moral outlook of the character and the notion that, as a character takes more and more morally questionable actions, she will eventually stop feeling bad about it. A character with a high morality would be more moral and saintly, while a person with a low morality would be able to take more dubious actions. As a person's morality falls, they run the increasing risk of becoming mentally unstable. This, too, was changed in the second edition. Morality was replaced entirely by an integrity stat which reflects a character's mental stability. Integrity can be allowed not only by performing questionable actions, but by witnessing of being subjected to the horrors, supernatural or otherwise, that occur in the setting. Publication. The core setting. Each new game setting now consists of a rule book which includes only those rules specific to the type of protagonist portrayed, leaving more room for specifics of that aspect of the world of darkness. This has also vastly improved compatibility between games, particularly as all characters are created as normal humans and thus have the same basic traits. Supernatural traits still vary for each character type, but their interactions with each other are governed largely by a single, simple mechanic. The playable supernatural types generally follow similar rules in terms of game mechanics, including 4 to 6 inherent sub-races, to which every character belongs based on the circumstances of his/her transformation into a supernatural being. 4 to 8 chosen factions, to which a character may belong based on his/her beliefs. A character does not usually need to belong to any of these groups. Power level trait, rated 1 to 10. High levels of this trait often limit the character's ability to interact with the world. Mummy: The Curse is the only World of Darkness game in which players begin at rating 10 and progressively become weaker. Morality, integrity trait, on a scale of 0 to 10. Falling to 0 typically results in complete insanity and loss of control of the character. Energy trait, consisting of temporary points used to fuel various powers with capacity and spending ability based on the power level trait. Learned powers arranged in traits rated 1 to 5, capable of rising higher when power level trait exceeds 5. Have access to similar powers. Technology is known as endowments. Beast, nightmares. The 3 core games are as follows: Vampire: The Requiem, Werewolf: The Forsaken, Mage: The Awakening. Limited series setting. In addition to the main 3 games, there are also additional limited series games, like Orpheus for the classic World of Darkness. Each of these 4th games will have a limited series of approximately 6 books, including the core rulebook. The first such game is Promethean, created for August 2006, based largely on Frankenstein and similar stories of giving the unliving life through alchemy. The second game is Changeling: The Lost, and was released in August 2007. It is a game based around characters that were taken and enslaved by fairies similar to those of European folk tales, who managed to escape to find they were no longer human themselves, and must find a new place in life. Due to overwhelming positive response to Changeling, White Wolf Publishing has continued publishing material for it, although it is not recognized as a core series. The third game, found.The Vigil, was released in 2008, dealing with humans who decide to confront the supernatural. The fourth game, games.The Sin Eaters, came out in 2009. The game concerns characters known as Sin Eaters who, at the point of death, bonded with one of the strange entities known as geists. They return to life, and are now able to journey into the underworld. No additional games were released in 2010 or 2011, but at the 2011 Gen Con, it was announced that a new Mummy game would be released in August 2012. It was announced at the Los Angeles by Night convention that the newest World of Darkness game is Demon: The Descent. At the 2014 Gen Con, Onyx Path announced that the next line would be Beast: The Primordial. At the 2015 Gen Con, Onyx Path announced that Deviant: The Renegades would follow. Promethean: The Created, Changeling: The Lost, Hunter: The Vigil, Geist: The Sin Eaters, Mummy: The Curse, Demon: The Descent, Beast: The Primordial, Deviant: The Renegades. Publication history: World of Darkness, Ghost Stories, Antagonists, Mysterious Places, Chicago, Armory, Second Sight, Shadows of the UK, Skin Changes, Tales from the 13th Precinct, Shadows of Mexico, Urban Legends, Book of Spirits, Asylum, Reliquary, Changing Breeds, Chicago Workings, inspired by Chicago, Midnight Roads, The Harvesters, inspired by Midnight Roads, Innocence, The New Kid, inspired by Innocence, Dogs of War, Ruins of inspired by Dogs of War, Slasher, initially for Hunter: The Vigil, later made into a general NWOD book, Inferno, Armory Reloaded, Immortals, Mirrors, Glimpse of the Unknown, Strangeness in the Proportion, Falling Scales, The God Machine Chronicle Anthology, The God Machine Chronicle, The Chronicles of Darkness, One World of Darkness, sometimes also referred to as Original World of Darkness or Old World of Darkness. The Original World of Darkness line was created in 1991 with the release of Vampire: The Masquerade. Support for it ended in 2004 with the release of Time of Judgment. The theme of the classic World of Darkness is described as Gothic punk by the developers. The World of Darkness resembles the contemporary world, but it is darker, more devious and more conspiratorial. The dichotomy between rich and poor, influential and weak, powerful and powerless, is much more pronounced than in the real world. Decadence, cynicism and corruption are common. Humans are unwitting victims or pawns of vast secret organizations of supernatural creatures. The vampires, werewolves and wraiths, among others, struggle with internal factionalism and against other species in secret wars of intrigue for control of reality. The battles in these wars may last centuries, beyond the realization or comprehension of ordinary humans. This status quo is recently threatened by the rise of a global technocratic cabal intent on monopolizing the power of belief and destroying all traditional supernatural societies. The mystical abilities of these non-human entities and their ability to alter reality at will are restricted by the rise of reason and disbelief in the supernatural, and they are forced to rely on more mundane methods in the struggles for supremacy and in the fight against the technocracy. The darkness of the setting is reflected everywhere. Architecture is dominated by Gothic styling and fashion, and personal personal style embrace goth punk and fetishistic elements. The game uses both historical milieux as well as modern settings. Despite the fantasy elements, the game emphasizes that any action has real-world consequences, and abilities beyond what is considered normal by mainstream society will draw unwanted attention and potentially disastrous results. History and playability. The various games of the classic WoD were developed separately by different teams of designers. At first there was little connection between the different games, and as time passed, more and more obvious connections were made in the canonical published material. This was planned from the beginning, though there was originally little in the way of oversight between individual games, and the World of Darkness became riddled with discrepancies and contradictions in the cosmologies of each game. This changed with the introduction of the revised editions in 1999. Many of the later game supplements have optional rules suggesting how to handle interactions between different types of supernatural beings, and in some cases, present rules that attempt to allow discrepancies to exist between settings. It is also explained that the discrepancies may represent various factions actually changing reality to their own beliefs or the differing views each group has about the world. The rules were increasingly streamlined and standardized, and the different systems began to look more similar with each new edition. The downside of this was that, with each step towards a common ground for the systems, the rules, terms, and templates underwent dramatic and backwards incompatible changes. During all this Wraith, the Oblivion was discontinued. Even after the release of the third edition of the core games, the various parts of the whole did not fit together cleanly. In the end, it was left up to each individual storyteller to interpret the rules and bridge the games when used together. Publication. White Wolf Publishing developed the following game sets in the classic World of Darkness between 1991 and 2003. Vampire: The Masquerade, Kindred of the Ebony Kingdom, Kindred of the East, Werewolf: The Apocalypse, Mage: The Ascension, Wraith: The Oblivion, Changeling: The Dreaming, Hunter: The Reckoning, Mummy: The Resurrection, Demon: The Fallen, Orpheus. Each consists of a rulebook and a number of supplemental sourcebooks, detailing specific clans and tribes, specific gadgets, and entire cities, including descriptions of all the supernatural denizens. White Wolf Publishing also developed historical settings for the major product lines. These include Vampire: The Victorian Age, Werewolf: The Wild West, Mage: The Sorcerer's Crusade, Wraith: The Great War, Vampire: The Dark Ages. Dark Ages versions of the settings: Dark Ages, Vampire Dark Ages, Werewolf Dark Ages, Mage Dark Ages, Fire Dark Ages, Inquisitor. After White Wolf Publishing acquired the rights to Ars Magica, additions were made to the game's setting to bring it into the World of Darkness timeline. Atlas Games would later acquire Ars Magica and remove these alterations, and the connection between Ars Magica and the classic World of Darkness is no longer considered canonical. Early advertisements for the Exalted game established it in a prehistoric age of the World of Darkness. Although many elements of Exalted correspond with the WoD, the two game lines were divorced after the classic WoD was brought to a conclusion. A World of Darkness sourcebook was published in 2 editions as well and provided general guidelines for story creation on any continent and in any milieu. These outlined the differences between African therianthropes and North American ones. For example, there was also a similar title for Werewolf entitled A World of Rage. annual themes. Each subsequent year of publication had a different theme. This brought about new sets of character types, but more importantly it dictated the focus of all the source books published that year. For instance, Vampire and Werewolf produced source books in the year of the Lotus cycle concerning a variety of Asian-themed creatures and expansions. End of CWOD. In late 2003, White Wolf Publishing announced it would stop publishing new books for the line, bringing the published history of the setting to an end with a series called The Time of Judgment. This event is described from different supernatural perspectives in 4 source books: Gehenna, Apocalypse, Ascension, and Time of Judgment. The publishers stated that, in doing so, they followed up on a promise that has existed in the world of darkness since the first edition of Vampire, with the concept of Gehenna, and in Werewolf, with the Apocalypse, as well as some elements of some of the published material that pertain to end-of-the-world themes in other games. Fiction novels from each of the 3 major gaming lines concluded the official storyline. The Onyx Path in 2011, a 20th anniversary edition of Vampire. The Masquerade was released, also called V20, and a series of further books for the CWOD were announced. Those books include conversion rules between some CWOD games and their NWOD counterparts, as well as material that was planned but not published before the end of the CWOD, as well as additional material for V20 and a 20th anniversary book based on Werewolf, The Apocalypse, for V20, as well as the upcoming V20 companion and the 20th anniversary Werewolf, The Apocalypse. White Wolf Publishing used an open development approach, where readers and gamers could give feedback to the authors. At Gen Con 2012, it was announced that Onyx Path Publishing is a new company by White Wolf creative director Richard Thomas, that will produce material to the new and classic world of darkness as licensee. In November 2012, it was announced by Onyx Path Publishing that due to the resounding success of the W20 Kickstarter, which reached over 400% of its target funds goal, a 20th anniversary Mage, The Ascension would be launched for 2013. At Gen Con 2012, the 2013 release schedule was outlined, including 2 new game settings: Mummy, The Curse, and Demon, The Descent. Onyx Path also announced that 2013 would feature a revised World of Darkness 1.5 core rules update titled The God Machine Chronicle and The Strix Chronicle. Vampire: The Eternal Struggle, one of the earliest collectible card games. Vampire: The Eternal Struggle is also based on the original World of Darkness, staying very true to the setting. As one of the longest-running CCGs in existence, it is the only WOD product that has not been discontinued. The Gehenna theme was featured in one expansion, but further expansions have been produced without any reboot of the franchise. Television series. In 1996, there was also a short-lived TV series set in the WOD called Kindred, The Embrace, that was produced by Spelling Television and broadcast by Fox. The show was based on the game Vampire: The Masquerade. It was cancelled in the US after only 8 episodes. The possibility of a Canadian television station picking the show up was preempted by the death of Mark Frankel, one of the stars of the show. Monty Cook's World of Darkness. In August 2007, White Wolf published the single-volume Monty Cook's World of Darkness. It was a take on a World of Darkness theme by veteran RPG designer Monty Cook. It was advertised as his last RPG book, before he would shift to writing fiction. The world in this setting is an Earth that has, some time prior to the start of the game, been hit by a global catastrophe caused by extra-dimensional alien beings who sought to enter reality, but have since been repelled by mankind's emotional will. Starting with the catastrophe, several supernatural beings and phenomenon appear, some accidental, some induced by the aliens to make mankind suffer to a level that allows them to enter reality. The game uses a D20-like system, with level-based advancement. It incorporates vampires, werewolves, mages, and demons into its setting, and has therefore some similarities to the classical, new World of Darkness. It also tries to capture certain aspects of these game worlds, like the mage's free magic system. The game offers D20-compatible rules to design spells and a magic system based on exhaustion, rather than the classic D20, and amp-D-like spells per day system. Although sharing the World of Darkness title, this game is a setting in its own right. World of Darkness Online, a merger between CCP Games and White Wolf Publishing, was announced at the annual EVE Online FanFest in Reykjavik, Iceland, in November 2006. As part of the deal, it was announced that White Wolf would be adapting the EVE Online intellectual property into a role-playing game, and CCP Games explicitly stated there will be a World of Darkness Online, referring to a massively multiplayer online role-playing game. According to news at the time, work had already begun on a World of Darkness MMORPG, and full-time production was to commence within the year and launch in 4 to 5 years. As of January 2008, full production of World of Darkness Online was scheduled to start March 2009 after the EVE Online expansion was finished. According to CCP, official confirmation that the game was in development surfaced in August 2009 on the official CCP website. The game was to be based on Vampire the Masquerade and would have focus on player politics and social interaction. According to senior producer Chris McDonough, there is no release date set. In October 2011, CCP announced that they would be significantly reducing the staff for the MMORPG, choosing instead to focus on the existing EVE Online universe. In a February 2012 interview at 10 Ton Hammer, it was reported that there were still at least 60 dedicated developers on the MMO and the project was still moving forward. In April 2013, in an interview at EVE FanFest 2013, it was reported that the World of Darkness Online team has worked on multiple projects at CCP, and were sharing technology with the company's other titles and teams. There are 70 people working on the tools and technology that will be used to build the World of Darkness, and it was stressed that the game is in pre-production. Chris McDonough said, "What we're doing is building a lot of tools, and we're trying to do it in a smart way. We have to be able to use the tools to make up the ground for the number of guys we have," and he also added, "Now, we'll ramp the team up when it comes time to go into actual production, but, for sure, we're making phenomenal progress." It was also announced the game was to be a next-generation MMO and will work like a vampire simulator. "We're making sure this is a next-generation MMO. It's very focused on movement and motion and capturing what it's like to be a vampire." People ask about our high-level designs for World of Darkness, and we've called this a vampire simulator. What's it like to be a vampire? Not a superhero, but a super-powered individual. The way the characters move around the city feels very vampiric, McDonough explained. The demo showed during the World of Darkness presentation at EVE FanFest 2013 proved this out. On April 14, 2014, CCP announced that the World of Darkness MMORPG was cancelled. On October 29, 2015, Paradox announced that it bought White Wolf, including World of Darkness and Vampire the Masquerade, from CCP. Paradox stated it planned to create multiple digital games titles following this acquisition. now in print. In 2011, White Wolf, an online role-playing game store, driven.com, began offering the new and classic World of Darkness source books in a print-on-demand format through the driven.Com website, starting with a number of formerly out-of-print Vampire the Masquerade books, and gradually adding more as they were ready for print. driven.Com and White Wolf have indicated that eventually all World of Darkness material will be available in this way.